Hi, this month I'm looking at resilience, and I'm delighted to have Andy Roberts join me to look at this topic. Andy, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks, David. And thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. Andy, you started your career with KPMG and you worked with them for 13 years as a consultant. You then changed career and moved into more of a coaching and well-being focus, training as a sports therapist and yoga teacher. You then did a master's in applied positive psychology and trained further as an emotional intelligence coach. You now run a multidisciplinary 30 practitioner well-being business in London and lecture in mindfulness, well-being, resilience, and compassion. So well experienced to talk on resilience today. So thank you for joining. I've got 3 questions for you, if I may. And the first question is, what do you think is the resilience elevator pitch?
I explained before we started this conversation that I can be a bit overly verbose, so I'll keep it short. I suppose it depends how big the building is and how slow the elevator's moving. But I would have to say, if you took something like, I've been working with a lot over the last few weeks around sleep, and if we kind of like don't get enough sleep, if we get less than 6 hours night after night after night, I'm going to be snappy. I'm going to be less collaborative. I'm going to be less tuned in to what my colleagues are telling me. So when I talk about kind of, I suppose, self-care and resilience, talk much more about, well, what are your well-being systems that are going to nurture you when times get tough? And obviously, we all have different well-being systems. Mine's meditation and swimming and walking the dog. But what are the things you're always going to go to keep your resilience levels high, so you can deploy your emotional intelligence abilities, so you'll be able to collaborate, communicate, and listen to your clients better. So probably in a nutshell, it would be that.
Brilliant, thanks for that. And it's lovely to hear some of the elements that you lean on in order to keep your resilience level up. And that walking the dog bit is something I can absolutely relate to. So thank you for that.
Actually, just before you ask the second one, it appears overly verbose, because like resilience can be a bit of a dirty word, right? Yeah. I mean, if I talk to my sister, who's an orthopedic nurse with 3 children under the age of 6, and she does night shifts, and I say I'm going to come in and teach you to be more resilient, she'd probably tell me where to jump off. So it is very much, a kind of really nuanced approach to, what works for you and what works for you, the context that you find yourself working in. So.
Yeah, and I think there's something interesting there, isn't there, about the right language and the right approach for the right environment, really, and the right culture, if you want it to land properly. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. As you said, resilience is a bit of a dirty word in some places, and there's a lot being spoken about resilience, but what's kind of hot in resilience? What's the latest thinking in resilience in terms of what's important?
Yeah, I'll probably think of a couple of things, actually. And one of them, you could say, is not a hot topic because we've known about it for a long time. I've been very lucky to be talking about and use strengths coaching for a long time. And I think, it's almost going back to the basics of that, particularly when we've been working away from each other for the last 2 years. We're constantly getting the wrong end of the stick. We're not seeing the other person's experience as much. And that can really get in the way of our collaboration. Our heuristic biases really get in the way. I know how much work I do because I do it. But my colleague, I care for them, but I don't walk in their shoes. I don't have their lived experience. And I think having a language and a framework for being on the lookout for the other person when they're being at their best, when they're playing to their strengths, can kind of get us to start shining the spotlight above our colleagues again and reconnect as we move to a new, this hopefully in the new old style of working, going back to seeing each other a little bit. So that's one thing. The second thing, really simply, I would say this research about the relationship between gut health and mental well-being. It's pretty well established about schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, and so on, and how this kind of inner gut world, this relationship with our well-being is so profound. So obviously it's about fiber and eating the rainbow and watching your booze and watching your caffeine and all I talk a good game around this, by the way, but so doing those things, and then I think in the years to come we'll really start, or the researchers really start to have a much more nuanced understanding of like an exploration of what's the appropriate diet for you that's going to best kind of like facilitate your promotion of your well-being.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, what's interesting, that first point was actually about not necessarily self-resilience, but supporting others in their resilience in terms of looking out for your colleagues. And I think the gut health thing is interesting. I remember a long time ago reading an article which pointed out the fact there's more nervous tissue in your gut than there is in your brain, and yet how badly we mistreat our gut and don't think about what we actually put through it, etc. And how, you know, that kind of whole being healthiness is a key part of resilience. Yeah.
Well, it's like a holistic approach. And I think, you know, the medical students I work with now, I did a lecture on this today, and it was almost like, yeah, we know all that. I wish I'd known it when I was at university when I was 19. I wouldn't have eaten the kebabs that I did, the booze that I did.
Yeah, we live and learn. Moving on to my third question, what is, if you think you see someone who possibly needs to have a resilience conversation, or they're working for you, or you're working with them, or you're, you know, they're within your community, if you like, friends and family, how do you go about starting that conversation? What's the best way to do it?
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's almost like the self-awareness piece. If you don't know, you don't know, right? And if somebody's kind of bottling out, say somebody in a leadership position who is a caring person, but so busy, got so many plates to juggle, that they're not really, they're not doing that deep dive inside. That their own physical tension, for example, might be through emotional contagion is affecting their colleagues and their clients. That's one thing. So they don't walk in the talk around well-being. That's one thing. But the second, you know, I'd probably go back to somebody like Dan Goleman a couple of years ago wrote a really great book called, I forgot what it's called now, Focus, the Hidden Driver of Excellence, right? And his model is basically 4 aspects of what a leader should focus on. You know, extracting value from what you've already got now, your 9 to 5, your safety systems. The second aspect is like exploring, you know, new kind of like potential new products and regulatory frameworks and all the rest of it. The third is harnessing the energy of your team by listening well and actually using interesting vocabulary to tell a story to your team. And then I say, well, what's the fourth aspect? Whenever I do this kind of work and people go, eh? And it's, well, it's self-care and self-awareness, because if you don't know that your own stress levels are effective, your own clinical decision-making, if you're a doctor, or your ability to listen, and you're impacting the well-being of your colleagues and your clients, then that's not being a leader. So that, I probably have that kind of like, it's not just about you, it's embedding self-care and resilience as a professional responsibility for your friends, for your family, for your colleagues, for your clients. So I'll probably do it in that kind of way.
Yeah.
I'll probably get chucked out of the room.
Yeah. So kind of call it out when you see it and have that conversation with them is around how they're showing up for other people effectively. Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, having that, having almost the Brené Brown approach of like, what is displaying vulnerability? It's kind of going inside and saying, okay, I can be optimistic, I can be strong, I can be resilient, but it's still tough inside what I'm kind of going through, and being open to explore that is a sign of great strength, I think. But also simply having the ability to kind of go inside and put a label around it, then is a point of learning and growth, and you can move on from it.
Yeah, super. Thank you for that, Andy. Lots for us to think about in terms of resilience there. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for joining us today.
Welcome. Cool.
As always, if this has prompted any questions for you on the topic of resilience or in coaching in general, then I'd be delighted to hear from you. So please get in touch.